At 83, Tab Hunter finally revealed their names, the men he loved in silence. Tab Hunter? He was America's golden boy. Blonde, blue-eyed, charming. He had the kind of face that could launch movie deals and melt hearts without saying a word. In the 1950s, he was everywhere. Magazine covers, movie posters, red carpets. But behind all the glamour, Tab was hiding a truth that could have ended his entire career. A truth about who he really loved. Because Tab Hunter was gay and for most of his life, he was forced to keep his heart locked away. Loving in silence, afraid that one wrong move could bring it all crashing down. But before he passed away, Tab did something extraordinary. He told the truth, not for sympathy, not for attention, but to finally reclaim his own story. And in this video, we're going to walk through the 5 men who shaped his hidden love life. Some were sweet, some were cruel, one helped him find peace, and one, well, let's just say person number 3 is the one you absolutely can't miss. The name, when you hear it, you'll understand why Tab had to keep that relationship buried deeper than all the others. It's unexpected, it's complicated, and it changed everything. So don't skip ahead. Watch until the very end, because these aren't just love stories, they're survival stories. And in a time when love could cost you everything, Tab Hunter paid the price again and again. If you believe that everyone deserves to love freely, no matter who they are, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. This is the story Hollywood never wanted you to hear. And trust me, the 3rd chapter will blow you away. Number 5. Anthony Perkins, the love that couldn't speak its name. They met in 1956, 2 young actors at the height of their beauty, both rising fast in a Hollywood that loved pretty faces but feared real emotions. Anthony Perkins was Broadway's golden boy. Tall and intelligent, with a gaze that looked like it hid 1,000 thoughts. Tab Hunter, well, Tab was the sun. Together they were magnetic, but only behind closed doors. They lived just a block apart in West Hollywood. They'd sometimes run into each other at premieres, award shows, or staged publicity events. In front of cameras, they barely exchanged a glance. But when the flashbulbs stopped popping, they'd slip away separately, often meeting later, away from everyone's eyes in rooms where the curtains were always drawn. Tab would later say it was one of the most powerful, honest loves of his life. And yet he was never allowed to hold Anoni's hand in public. Never allowed to laugh too loud near him. Never allowed to simply exist beside him like any straight couple could. They lived in fear. Fear of the press, fear of their studios, and most of all, fear of being exposed. And then it happened. One night, a photographer from Confidential magazine snapped a photo of them walking out of El Coyote, a small Mexican restaurant on Beverly Boulevard. They weren't holding hands. They weren't even being affectionate, just a quick smile, a pat on the shoulder. But in 1957, that was all it took. That grainy black and white image turned into a national scandal. The article came out weeks later with the headline, "Hollywood's Golden Boy Seen Whispering in the Dark." No names, but everyone knew. Tab's fan mail dropped overnight. Theaters in the South took down his posters. A group called We Deserve Moral Stars gathered thousands of signatures demanding Warner Brothers fire him if the rumors were true. Tab's manager, Henry Wilson, went into crisis mode. He released a statement claiming Tab was seriously dating a female magazine editor. He booked him to sing Young Love Live on The Ed Sullivan Show, a desperate move to remind America that their dreamboat still loved women. That night, millions watched Tab smile and sing about innocent romance while his own was falling apart behind the scenes, because that very night during the live broadcast, a note was passed to Tab from a stage assistant. It was from Anthony. It read, "I can't do this anymore. They'll destroy both of us." No goodbye, no explanation, just that one sentence. And just like that, it was over. Tab never saw Anthony in the same way again. Not because he stopped loving him, but because the world made love feel like a crime, a risk, a liability. Years later, Anthony Perkins would go on to play Norman Bates in Psycho, a role that made him immortal. Tab would fade quietly into less visible projects. Still handsome, still kind, but carrying a heartbreak that never fully healed. In interviews, Tab never blamed Anthony. He understood he too had lived in fear. But once, just once, he said something that told you exactly how deep it went. "I was praised as the embodiment of masculinity, but I was never allowed to be a man in love." Number 4. Ronnie Robertson. The letters that burned. Before the tabloids, before the scandals, before the fear ever had a name, there was Ronnie. Ronnie Robertson wasn't just a world-class figure skater. He was grace in motion. Young, elegant, dazzling on the ice. He moved like he had nothing to hide. And for a brief moment, Tab Hunter envied that freedom. Because with Ronnie, for the first time, love felt playful, sweet, almost safe. They met through a friend in the early 1950s, before Battle Cry, before Confidential magazine, before the eyes of the nation followed Tab's every step. Ronnie had a laugh that cut through all the noise in Tab's head. They didn't have to say too much, just soft touches, small glances, quiet hours spent listening to records in dimly lit rooms far away from Hollywood. They couldn't call it dating. Not in public, but behind closed doors, it was everything. They wrote each other letters, dozens, pages filled with inside jokes, flirty codenames, and notes about secret meeting spots. Tuesday at 3, same trail in a Nino. Tab would hide them under his mattress, read them after long filming days like little prayers that someone somewhere saw him. Not the image, but the man. For a while, Ronnie was the escape, the pause button with him. Tab didn't have to be perfect. He just had to be real. But in 1952, everything changed. That fall, Tab was arrested during a late-night party in Walnut Park, caught up in a police raid that wasn't about justice, but about exposure. Though he was never charged with anything serious, the media frenzy exploded. Reporters camped outside his apartment. Former friends turned into sources, and silence, once a shield, became a trap. One day, in the middle of it all, Tab received a package, no return address. Inside were copies of the letters he had written Ronnie, highlighted, underlined. Alongside them, a typed note, "I have more. Reuters and Confidential are both interested. I need 10,000 3 days." It was from Ronnie. Tab never said what hurt more, the betrayal or the fact that it was written so cleanly. No apology. No trace of the boy who used to skate backward while laughing like a child. Just a demand. Tab paid. Almost all of his remaining savings from an ad campaign deal went into that hush money. No lawyers, no confrontation, just silence again. Silence to survive. He burned the rest of the letters that same night. Every envelope, every memory gone in a kitchen sink ashtray. Watching the paper curl and blacken, Tab said later, was the only time he felt like he was erasing love with his own hands. Years would pass and Ronnie faded into the past. One name among many that Hollywood buried, but Tab never forgot. How could he? Ronnie was the first man who made him feel number 3. Rudolf Nureyev, the fire that couldn't be touched. He was chaos wrapped in grace, a rebel in tights, a storm dressed like a swan. Rudolf Nureyev didn't walk into rooms. He exploded into them. Soviet defector, global ballet icon known for his impossible leaps, his magnetic eyes, and a temper that could ignite entire rehearsal halls. In the 1960s, he was the most dangerous kind of beautiful, and Tab Hunter should have known better. But desire doesn't ask for permission, and this time, it didn't ask for safety, either. They met through a mutual friend at a small after-party in West Hollywood. Nerve had just finished a sold-out performance at the Shrine Auditorium. Tab had just wrapped filming on a mid-budget western no one would remember. Their worlds were different, so were their rules. But when Rudolph saw Tab, he didn't care about rules. He walked straight up to him, locked eyes, and said without irony, "You're more handsome than your posters." Then he laughed like it was nothing. And that was the beginning. It wasn't a relationship, it was a collision, a fleeting thing. Tab never even called it love, but it was intoxicating. The kind of pull you don't explain, you just give into. They saw each other maybe 4 times. Always in private homes, always after dark. No photos, no notes, no promises. Nerve was bold where Tab was cautious. He'd make jokes in public, touch Tab's elbow in crowded rooms, lean in too close during whispered conversations. Every move was a risk, and it terrified Tab, because in that time, Tab was still trying to salvage what was left of his public image. Studios were backing away. Casting agents stopped calling, and one wrong headline could finish him off. But Rudolph, he didn't care. He had already defected from one empire. He wasn't about to bow to another. One night, after a long evening in the Hollywood Hills, Rudolph leaned in and asked, "Why do you hide your fire? You could burn so beautifully." Tab didn't answer. He just smiled, kissed him once, and left. They never met again. Years later, Tab would speak of Rudolph in only one sentence during an interview. "He reminded me what it was like to feel alive and what it cost to stay that way." It was a brief chapter, a flash in the dark, but it left a mark. Because Nerve wasn't just a man Tab wanted. He was the man Tab couldn't be. Unapologetic, uncontainable, free. And in a world where Tab Hunter had spent his entire life walking carefully through the minefield of fame, Rudolf Nureyev danced across it, laughing as it exploded beneath him. Number 2, Roddy McDowall, the friendship that almost became more. If there was ever a man who understood Tab Hunter without asking a single question, it was Roddy McDowall. They met the way many closeted men in Hollywood did, through work, through whispers, through knowing glances at industry dinners where everyone smiled too widely but trusted too little. Roddy was already a star in his own right, a child actor turned stage veteran turned cult icon. But unlike most in their circle, he carried no arrogance, just gentleness and an eye for people who were quietly unraveling. Tab and Roddy didn't fall in love overnight. It wasn't fire. It was something slower, softer. Trust built in silence. They would spend hours together, not in secret rendezvous, but in bookstores, art galleries, long beach walks with coffee in hand, and caps pulled low. There were no grand declarations, but there were looks, long ones, safe ones. The kind of eye contact that says, "I see you. You're safe here." Roddy never pushed. He never probed into Tab's past or asked for more than Tab was ready to give, but he was always there. They had a ritual. Every Sunday morning, they'd meet at the same cafe in Santa Monica, order the same drinks, talk about anything but Hollywood. Roddy would bring books, Tab would bring old photographs. They built a little world, one where no one needed to perform, and in that space something began to shift. Tab would later describe Roddy as a rare kind of honest, not because he said everything, but because he never pretended. Roddy had his own reasons for staying guarded. Hollywood may have loved his work, but it never would have accepted his truth. There were nights when they came close, a lingering hand, a slow lean that almost became something else. But both men had been burned before, and both knew that in their world, love could turn into a weapon the moment it left the shadows. So instead of a kiss, there was a smile. Instead of "I love you," there was "see you next week." In another lifetime, Tab might have said yes, might have crossed that invisible line and chosen a love that looked more like home than escape. But this was still the Hollywood of closed doors, of arranged dates with actresses, of contracts that warned what kind of photos could get you fired. And Roddy, he understood, maybe better than anyone. They never had a falling out, no final scene, just a friendship that stayed exactly where it was, hovering between what it was and what it could have been. Decades later, when Roddy passed away in 1998, Tab didn't attend the public memorial, but he did write a note quietly, privately. It said, "He was the safest silence I ever knew and the one I sometimes wish I'd spoken into." Number 1, Allan Glaser, the one he didn't have to hide. By the time Tab met Allan Glaser, he had nothing left to prove and everything still to protect. Hollywood had already chewed him up and moved on. The phone didn't ring like it used to. The fan mail had slowed to a trickle. His face, once printed on every magazine rack in America, had faded into the quiet corners of nostalgic memory. But maybe that was what made room for something real. Allan wasn't just a film producer. He was younger, ambitious, and smart. Sharp in a way that didn't try to compete with Tab's past, but understood it. He'd grown up admiring Tab from afar, and when they met, it wasn't lightning or scandal or danger. It was steady. It was intentional. It was safe. For the first time in his life, Tab didn't have to lie to be loved. There were no stage dates with starlets. No phone calls from managers at midnight. No threats, no edits, no headlines. Just 2 men, 2 dogs, and a quiet home in Santa Barbara with a stable full of horses and a garden that needed watering. Allan didn't want Tab's persona. He wanted his truth. And when the world had long stopped listening, Allan leaned in and asked the question no one else had ever asked. "Are you ready to tell your story?" Tab said, "Yes." Together they co-produced Tab Hunter Confidential, a book and later a documentary that peeled back the curtain on everything he had endured. The studio manipulation, the public lies, the private heartbreaks. Tab came out publicly in the memoir, not because he needed applause, but because finally he didn't feel afraid. The book shocked people. The documentary moved them. For the first time, Hollywood looked into the eyes of one of its forgotten sons and said, "We're sorry." Tab didn't live in bitterness. He didn't ask for revenge. He didn't demand to be remembered. He simply wanted peace. And for 35 years until the day he died, he found it in Allan. In interviews, you could hear it in his voice. That lightness, that quiet joy, that freedom he never thought he'd live long enough to taste. And when he was asked why he finally told the truth, Tab said something that more than anything sounded like closure. "Because I wanted to say thank you to the man who loved me when I had nothing left but the truth." On July 8, 2018, just 3 days before his 87th birthday, Tab Hunter passed away in that same quiet home beside Allan. No scandal, no secrets, no more shadows. He left this world not as the boy next door or the poster child for something he never was. He left as a man who had finally lived as himself. And maybe that's the real story of Tab Hunter. Not just a list of lovers, but a journey from a scripted life to an honest one. From love in hiding to love in bloom. And a reminder to all of us, it's never too late to tell your story. And it's never too late to be loved out loud.